The nights of Rome were never silent. When darkness spread in all directions, sounds would also emerge from the earth. The clatter of iron boots, the clanking of armor, the smell of burning wood rising from torches, and somewhere far, with a muffled breath, a different story would awaken. That story was alive in every caravan, every march, every camp of the Roman army. This was the story of the Roman war dogs. They were creatures that could not speak, could not write history, yet without them, every chapter of the Roman Empire's rise feels incomplete. They were those loyal, silent soldiers who recognized danger not with their eyes, but with the blood rushing in their veins. The sense of their presence was not in words, but in that profound silence that lingered around them. When soldiers would sleep, exhausted, and the cold night air would drift through the camp, these dogs would open their eyes further. Their vision seemed to pierce the darkness. Their ears listened to the pulse of the earth. Their noses could identify every foreign particle dissolved in the air. They were not mere animals. They were living instruments, those senses of the Roman army that never tired, never slept. They would erect an invisible wall around the camp, a wall that could not be seen, but whose existence made every enemy's hair stand on end. To the Romans, a dog was not just a pet, it was a relationship. It was the guardian of the home, protector of children, keeper of fields, and a brother in war. From childhood, Romans would live with these animals, converse by looking into their eyes, feed and care for them with their own hands. It was from here that the bond was born, which later became stronger than steel. As Rome's empire expanded, so did its enemies change. The enemy was no longer found just on the battlefield. He would hide in the dense shade of forests, plot behind mountain rocks, arrive with a creeping footstep under the black veil of night. In such times, human senses were limited, but the dog's senses were still awake. Its nose could catch any new or foreign scent, even if that scent was 50 yards away. It could differentiate between the smells of sweat, metal, leather, and fear. It knew who was the Roman soldier returning tired, who was the lost foreign merchant, and who was the enemy with a dagger hidden in his heart. This was why the Roman army chose these specific breeds of dogs, which were not only powerful but also intelligent. Today, we know them as Canis. This was not a single breed. It was a family. Those giant dogs of Greece's Molossus breed, whose bones were strong, chests broad, and jaws so powerful they could crush the enemy's armor. Over time, the Romans mixed them with various local breeds to develop a new type, which was even more ruthless and obedient. There was a particular glint in these dogs' eyes, a glint that reflected not savagery, but training. They did not bark disorderly, nor did they run uncontrollably. They looked toward their officer, awaited his hand signal, and then silently carried out their task. It was this discipline that set them apart from a common wild dog, making them a Roman soldier. The process of their training was itself a secret. They were brought to military camps as puppies. They grew up there, played there, matured amidst the sounds of soldiers, the clang of weapons, the smell of iron, and human sweat. They were taught the difference between the scent of their own and that of strangers. Soldiers would feed them with their own hands, pat their backs, sleep with them. All of this had one purpose, so that a deep attachment to the entire camp would form in the dog's heart and mind. It began to consider every person whose scent was familiar as its own, and when a stranger approached, it would immediately become alert. This was not merely training. It was a psychological bond that did not break even in moments of death. When the army would arrive at a new place and set up camp, those moments were extremely delicate. Tired, weary soldiers let down weapons, half-dug trenches, and the still-forming wooden barricade. For the enemy, this was the best opportunity to strike. Suddenly, yet, during this very time, the Roman war dogs would be deployed for their duty. They would form a silent, yet alive, perimeter around the camp. They would circle, sniff the air, listen to the ground. If there was any unusual movement, they would not bark. They would simply emit a deep, low growl that would race through the entire camp like electricity. This growl was a verbal warning that would seep into every soldier's spine. Before the enemy could attack, the entire camp would already be on alert. And then there was these dogs' attire. Their bodies bore shining metal plates that covered their backs and chests. Their necks had spiked metal collars so that if any enemy tried to grab them, they would injure themselves. Sometimes, iron nails were even embedded in their paws so they could tear the enemy apart. This sight was not just physical. It was a mental assault. In the dark night, under the flickering light of torches, when a large, black, metal-clad dog silently appeared before you, the enemy's blood would run cold. Many prisoners and enemy soldiers later confessed that they felt the most fear at the very moment they first saw a Roman war dog. This fear was not rational. It was primal. It was the kind that sinks deep into the human soul. But the true power of these dogs was their restraint. They never advanced without a command. They were controlled by verbal orders, specific whistle tunes, and hand signals. This is what set them apart from the war dogs of other nations. Many tribes' dogs were merely destructive, who in anger would forget the difference between friend and foe. But the Roman dog thought like a soldier. It knew when to attack, when to stop, and when to retreat and regroup. It walked in step with its fellow soldiers, understanding their movements. On the battlefield, these dogs turned the tide of many battles. When enemy lines were strong, and the Roman army could see no way forward, these dogs would be sent ahead. They would penetrate enemy ranks, cut horses' legs, knock soldiers to the ground, and clamp their jaws on their throats. Amidst this chaos and turmoil, the Roman army would advance, correcting its organized lines. The enemy's lines would break. Their morale would plummet. Historical documents contain instances where an entire enemy campaign halted solely due to the fear of these dogs. Many historians write that the Romans' dogs were far more effective than swords and spears because they were unpredictable. Their fear would settle in hearts. But above all these combat skills, their greatest strength was their loyalty. This was an emotion that training could not teach. It came from the heart. There are many incidents where a soldier would fall wounded in battle, and his dog would cover his body, not letting enemies come near. It would take wounds, bleed, but not flee, abandoning its master. Sometimes, even after the master's death, the dog would stand guard by his corpse, not letting anyone approach until it too lost its life. This loyalty was not just the relationship of a master and his pet. It was the bond between two warriors that did not end even with death. In Julius Caesar's era, when the Roman army set foot in the remote and wild regions of Gaul, present-day France and Britain, they also encountered the local war dogs there. Celtic and Germanic tribes had their own dogs, which were large and aggressive. The Romans began to mix these local breeds with their Molossus dogs. This interbreeding produced new varieties that could endure cold weather, withstand hunger and thirst for longer periods, and were adept at climbing in mountainous areas. This new breed was a stronger version of Canis pugnax, which played a significant role in helping the Roman army achieve victory in new regions of Europe. These dogs were not limited to the battlefield. They were also part of the empire's internal governance, guarding prisoner convoys, chasing escapees, sentry duty at city gates. These tasks were entrusted to them. Their mere presence dampened the spirits of many potential rebels. People knew these dogs were not just fearsome to look at. They were truly lethal. This fear further strengthened the power of Roman law. In Roman society, these dogs held a special respect. They received rations like regular soldiers, their wounds were treated, and after a lifetime of service, they were allowed to live in peace. An old war dog, whose teeth were broken and could no longer fight, would also be cared for in the camp, like a military pension, and when it died, it would be buried with honor. During excavations in Italy, graves have been found inscribed with words like, "Here rests Suchan Suchdog," who remained loyal to the First Legion for 10 years, participated in 3 military campaigns, and saved his master's life twice. These are not just words. They're a symbol of a civilization's acknowledgement that loyalty and bravery are not the monopoly of any one species. Today, when we ponder the greatness of the Roman Empire and the causes of its decline, the names of emperors, images of conquering generals, and magnificent palaces come before us. But perhaps we forget those silent soldiers who gave those generals the gift of night's sleep, who secured the foundations of those palaces. If the Roman army could sleep fearlessly in its camps, if the enemy's hidden tactics repeatedly failed, if the empire's borders were so strong, then a major reason for this was these dogs. They were those living weapons that never rusted, those soldiers who never rebelled, those protectors whose reward was merely a full stomach and a pat. The paw prints of these dogs were not only left on sand and soil, they are also recorded on the pages of history, albeit faintly. They could not rule, nor conspire, nor build palaces. Their work was only one: to serve loyally and protect their fellow human. And perhaps this is the lesson that the Roman war dogs give us. Greatness lies not only in conquest and expansion, greatness also lies in that loyalty which remains unnamed, in that bravery which leaves no mark, and in that love which has no language but can be seen with the heart. When we imagine Rome today, we should remember these dogs as well, because they were that part of the empire which never died, but only fell asleep in the pages of history books.